you might be wondering, did they just procrastinate a ton and not write their speeches until very recently, or did we save the best two for last?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. We'll find out. Could be both. Without further ado, to introduce our first speaker of the night, his name is Willy Xiao. He's a senior in Eliot House, fellow EDC member, does lots of things. I don't even know where to start. Do you have a title of your speech yet?
TBD? No, yeah.
Okay, his title is officially titled TBD.
Yeah.
So Willy Xiao.
Thanks, Peter. Can everyone hear this? Okay. Cool. Thanks. As seniors thinking about where we're going, we like to reflect on where we're from. Quite literally, my blockmate Mahi is from Delaware, Jasmine is from across the country, LA, and David Boone comes from Cleveland. And if you've been following the NBA playoffs right now, you might know that Cleveland is utterly embarrassing the Atlanta Hawks. So I waver just a little bit when I say I'm from Atlanta. I actually grew up 30 minutes outside of Atlanta in Johns Creek, which claims a Chinese population of about 6%. It's about 24% Asian, so if you have, so here you have your bubble tea shops, you have your ping pong summer camps, you have your Chinese school, you have your traditional dance academies, and this is really nice for my family. My grandma can walk down the street to a friend's house where she has her old people parties. My grandpa joined a Chinese choir, and my dad does the backstage tech for a blowout 2,000-person Chinese New Year gala every year, in much the same way that Jesus does for like 5 different shows on campus. And this year, after about 6 months of door knocking and phone calling, an Asian candidate was elected to the city council for the first time in the city's history. And I thought about telling that story. And I thought about telling it, but I realized there was something a little bit more important beneath all of that. And the story I want to tell is this. In much the same way that each incoming Harvard class has to do every year, the Chinese immigrants in Johns Creek are a population that had to learn how to become a community. They had to straddle both the customs from home and learn how to participate in the American context at large. And today I have a story to help illustrate that point. In the summer of 2005, one of my parents' college classmates took a trip to Yosemite with his mom. His working wife stayed home and took care of their 2 little boys, Max, who was 2, and Marshall, who was 5. And as he drove along the mountainous, careening roads, a glare of sun caught his eye. He soared past the guardrails and plummeted a few hundred feet downwards into a ravine. At the time, I was only 11, but I could understand the significance of this event. I saw my friend's parents come over to my house 3 nights in a row to talk about what to do. They started by phoning local media, they called the California news channels and even Chinese shows to broadcast the missing persons report. Soon as we started hearing more people in the community wanting to help, my dad realized that we had literally raised enough money to fly a helicopter over Yosemite from dawn to dusk to look for this man. Later, an email was sent out, and a dad from my basketball team, the Chinese teacher at our local high school, and the president of my parents' college alumni association volunteered to physically go with the wife out to Yosemite to continue searching. Max and Marshall stayed with us during this in my home, and one night as my mom was changing Max's diaper and I was trying to entertain Marshall with Pokemon games, they called, and they had spotted a purple rental car deep in the ravine, bodies mangled and decomposing. And flushed with sorrow and exhaustion, my mother picked up Max in her arms and cried for a boy who would never get to know his father. And this is a terrible tragedy. And looking back on it though, a decade later, I realized that the local media that first broadcasted the missing persons report are the mediums through which our community talks to each other. The phone lines screaming for help in crisis, raising money, were the phone lines that hotly campaigned for a city council spot. And the community leaders sent to Yosemite became the same people who lead charges to defend our community's political rights. We learned not just emotionally how to be the informal insurance for others in times of crisis, but we learned basic questions that new communities are forced to learn, the logistical steps needed to sway people and to come together. And this is not to say that crises are somehow easy now, but my community made ours livable. When I found out that my grandpa was diagnosed with ALS, I was at Mark's house for the weekend. I talked to Kevin about it and about what it means to grow up with grandparents who grew up under the same roof as you. And in the last week of my grandpa's life, when he could no longer speak, Dipti stopped working and hugged me and cried with me. I'm proud of my community at home for what they've created. And in the last 4 years, I've seen classes of Harvard students creating the rituals and routines and support networks that we learn to rely upon. I'm proud of my blockmates who have come together from such disparate parts of the world and learned to love each other and deal with each other and protect each other. And because I'm going before Jesus, I can steal his line. Thank you.